I just really wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who came out tonight. We really appreciate your being here. Your input is important to us. My name is Kathleen Sloan. I'm the senior siting analyst for this project, Yellow Rosebush Energy Center, for the Department of Energy. So I am with the Oregon Department of Energy. I am a siting analyst that works on behalf of the Energy Facility Siting Council. And I first wanted to introduce my ODO team that is also here. So Sarah Esterson is here in the room. She's our senior policy advisor. It's been with ODO for many years, eight going on 9. And then another senior siting analyst behind me is trying to back out of the room. Chase McVeigh Walker. He's been with ODO for 6 years, also a siting analyst. And then our administrative assistant is Nancy Hatch. She is our all-purpose go-to for all things technical, and will be running the technical part of our meeting. Just so people in the room know, we are also broadcasting this meeting live. It is available on WebEx, the webinar, and there are also opportunities for people to call in. So when we get to the comment period of our meeting, we'll open it up to the room first, the WebEx second, and then. But I would also like to introduce what we call our applicants from the Yellow Rosebush team, and Savion, and this is Jeff Watson. He's going to co-present with me tonight. He's going to present on the project itself on behalf of the applicant developer, and I'm going to let him introduce his team. So they've got a team with him.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Jeff.
Push the button.
Yeah.
There you go. You're on.
All right, we're good.
Now you're good.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Watson. I'm a development manager at Savion Energy and the lead developer on Yellow Rosebush. So I'm going to go around the room here and introduce the Savion team. So starting with Mitch Taylor, who is our director of development for the Pacific Northwest and M&A. We have Annika Soulsby, who is our director of permitting. We have, let's see, Chris Powers, Senior Director of Permitting, Adam Williams, who is our VP of, our VP of Development in the West, and Gary Parker, to his right, our VP of EPC. So we also have Paul Hicks and Ash Woods, who are joining us from Tetra Tech, who are our permitting consultants and working very closely through the photo process with us. So I think I got everyone. Yeah, and that is the Savion team. So excited to tell you a little bit about the project and hear whatever questions or comments you may have tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. So first couple things I want to go over, just general housekeeping. There are coffee, tea, lemonade, water. There were cookies. They might have all gotten out by the door in the lobby, and then the restrooms are past the front desk. Take a left, then take a right, and see the writing on the wall. In case of emergency, run out the store. So that's just housekeeping. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go over our meeting agenda. The purpose of this meeting is really to give a little bit of information about the project and our process, but it's really to allow the public to comment if they have comments or ask questions about the facility, the proposed facility. So we're going to keep the presentation side brief so that we can open it up for public comment as soon as possible. But there are some things I need to cover. One of them is just the energy facility siting process overview. As I mentioned, I work for the Department of Energy for the state of Oregon. We are the siting division, and we work in support of the Energy Facility Siting Council. It is the council that makes the decision to approve or deny an application for a site certificate. So I'll go through our process and how the public can engage and participate in that process. And then we're going to go over a little bit on the project facility, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, who will give more information on the proposed facility. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. Next slide. So as I noted, this is an informational meeting. The informational meeting is intended to give the public an opportunity to make comments. It is not a contested case hearing, and participation in this meeting, I'll get more into the contested case when I get into our process, but participation in this meeting and making comment is not required in order to preserve your right to standing or bring up, asked to join into a contested case. We do ask that everybody hold their questions and comments to the end of the presentation. And then the last part is, please just be respectful. We like to conduct ourselves in a respectful manner. We have a lot of material to cover, and we just want to make sure that everybody has time to make a comment. If there are a lot of people who want to comment, we may have to put a time limit, but we'll just play it by ear as we go on. So as I noted, this is siting division. We serve as technical staff to what we call it Energy Facility Siting Council. We use a lot of acronyms, but we call it FSEC for short. So the FSEC process is a state process, and it's set in Oregon administrative rules and Oregon revised statutes. And we have 16 general standards, which I will cover in a minute. And as I said, the siting division staff really works in support of council, and our job is to put applications through technical review. So to make sure that these facilities can meet the requirements of those standards that need to be met in order to have council be willing to approve a site certificate. And then it also has conditions that certificate holder has to commit to in order to have that site certificate. Next slide. So this slide is really just to explain our role and why we're involved. We're not involved in all energy projects. We're limited to those that are defined through the ORS 469-300, which is what defines a state jurisdictional energy facility. And there are different rules that apply. This is basically the actual reason why we're here tonight is that this proposal falls under the definition of an FSEC jurisdictional facility for a solar facility. And it's really defined by either 160 acres of high value farmland, 1,280 acres of land that's predominantly cultivated, or at least meets the capability classes for agriculture, and then a limit of 1,920 acres or larger for any other land. So this proposed facility covers 8,075 acres, approximately 12.6 square miles of private land that is zoned for exclusive farm use. So that is why it's an FSEC jurisdiction facility. And for that reason, the proponent, the applicant, needs to apply for a site certificate. And in order to obtain that site certificate, they must demonstrate that that facility can meet these standards that we're going to talk about tonight. And the first step in that process is submitting what is called the notice of intent. We issued a public notice on the notice of intent in October and scheduled this public information meeting as part of our outreach on the notice. This is kind of my favorite slide because at a glance, you can see, next slide, the process laid out kind of in a bracket. So we have 7 major steps in the site certificate process. And as you can see with the red box, we are at the very beginning. We're at the notice of intent phase. And those purple boxes, they're supposed to be green, but our projector is not projecting the right colors. Those purple boxes are the areas, the ones that say public notice, comment period, info meeting, and across are areas where the public has the opportunity to provide input and engage in our process. So at the notice of intent phase, an applicant will submit a proposed project. And the information that they submit in that notice of intent is basically a desktop level analysis of the idea, the concept of their facility, what they want to do, where, and then the known information as it applies to our standards. We then issue a public notice. We hold a public information meeting. And when we issued that public notice on October 10th, we opened up a public comment period. And so until that public comment period closes on the notice of intent, which is December 1st, the public has the opportunity to provide comments on this proposed project. It's the first step of getting public input on this project. And our council is very interested in hearing what the public has to say. So if you have thoughts or opinions about a facility that's under our exec jurisdiction, I highly encourage you to engage in our process because it will help our council make a decision. So we are at the very first step of a notice of intent. After the public meeting and the public comment period closes, and during this time, we are also coordinating with what we call reviewing agencies. Reviewing agencies are local governments, local affected governments, the state resource agencies, like we have ODFW here tonight, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. We, as a department, a division, have to engage in coordination and consultation with all our state reviewing agencies and also tribal governments, affected tribal governments. And again, it's to engage, coordinate, make them aware of the project, and get input from all of these entities on how this proposal is being presented, any concerns or issues, things that we need to consider as we review through our standards. So based on all of the comments we received, we move on to the next step, and that's the project order. I will be preparing the project order. So the project order is basically a summary of all of the input we get, run it through a filter of our standards, and come up with what we call analysis areas that are required for each of our standards that need to be, what needs to be included in the actual application. Because in a notice of intent, it's a notice of intent to file it or submit an application for a site certificate. No application has actually been submitted or received. So the applicant is preparing all the materials to include in their application at this time. And so while I write the project order, they're working on their studies and coordination and analysis and coming up with their plans. And then we issue the project order, and it will tell the applicant what needs to be included in that application. And that is, so we issue the project order. The notice of intent is valid for 2 years. So in the time that from the notice of intent phase, we received a complete notice of intent on this project on September 28th in 2023. They have 2 years to submit an application. Now, the applicant has indicated they would like to submit it earlier than that, but just realize there's a 2-year window that they have to submit that application. So it could be as late as September 2025 that they would actually submit, but it's up to them and how soon they get it all together. So the next stage is the actual preliminary application, and then what we call a complete application. So again, they submit information to us for review, and the application is quite extensive. There are exhibits, documents, survey reports, everything that gets in there. We again issue a public notice. We will open it up again for public comment. And then we have an information meeting at that point too. And that's important if there's been particularly a long period of time that's elapsed between the NOI and the actual application. And again, we review with the coordinating agencies, reviewing agencies, the tribes, the local governments. For this project, because it's located in Wasco and Sherman County, both of those counties have been identified as special advisory groups. They're Board of Commissioners. So Wasco County and Sherman County have the ability to participate in our process as what we call special advisory groups. And they will also provide input throughout our process. And then the next step is the draft proposed order. The Department of Energy Siting Division staff, we prepared the draft proposed proposed order. And it's our evaluation of the application materials. And as we run it through a filter of our standards. So we make recommendations in those draft proposed orders. We include conditions that should be added to a site certificate. These are all recommendations for our council. We then issue yet another public notice. And it opened up another comment period, but we also hold what is a public hearing. And that is after the materials have been made available to the public so that they're on our webpage, you've been received a notice, there's ways for people to go in who are interested and read all these materials, or maybe they just want to read some of them. And a public hearing is a formal public comment period. And when I had mentioned the contested case proceeding, which is built into our process, if you want to participate in a contested case or think you might, it's very important that you have commented on the record of the draft. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind. We bring that draft proposed order to the Energy Facility Siting Council for review. After it's gone through the public hearing, we compile all the comments that we receive, and they review it. And they will make comments themselves and make recommendations to us and things that they might want to see or change. And we take that information and we process it and add it into the document and edit the draft proposed order, and then it becomes the proposed order. We again issue a notice. When we issue that notice, there's a notice of the opportunity of a contested case proceeding. And there will be information on how to request a contested case or be a party to a contested case at that time in that notice. The contested case is built into our process. If no one requests a contested case, we don't have one. We don't actually hold one, but it's a placeholder in our process. If there's a contested case, there is a whole process that goes through before it goes to the final order. Again, council will review this proposed order. They might have additional comments. At the very end, we take our proposed order and we take it to council for approval. It's council, the asset council, that makes the decision to grant or deny a site certificate for a facility. So if you look at under the pointy arrows, there's different colored boxes under each of those. And what that's showing is who's basically the lead on that. So notice of intent, it's the applicant's job to prepare that. The project order, it's the Department of Energy siting staff that prepare that. Again, the application materials are prepared by the applicant. We prepare the siting division, the draft proposed order and the proposed order. Council is the one that makes the decision on the site. So it's kind of a big overview of our process. And what is not on this slide is the appeal path. Final FSEC decisions are appealable directly to the Oregon Supreme Court, and they have 6 months to issue a decision if it is. We have a public guide on our website. There's copies of the public notice if you didn't get one on the table back there, along with some information sheets. And there are links on there on how to get to all of our documents on the internet.
Can you take questions during this, or do you want to wait?
We would like you to hold questions till the end, but if you want us to go back to a slide, we can do that during Q&A. So I had mentioned earlier reviewing agency. This is just a little bit more information on, what are the reviewing agencies? What is their role? How do we utilize reviewing agency input and coordination? And the reviewing agencies serve a really important role in our process because they provide comments on the proposed facility within the jurisdiction or expertise of the agency. So if there are sensitive species, then we talk to ODFW about habitat and habitat mitigation plans and the species that might be impacted. So it's a really important part of us getting information. And like I said, these are the state agencies, the local governments, the tribal governments. Sometimes it's a federal agency, depending on the facility. and if it's in, a federal jurisdiction. And all of them help us as a siting division to just identify and determine what kind of studies and what kind of analysis needs to be conducted, which permits are required, any kind of specific rules or administrative rules or statutes or ordinances, local zoning considerations, things like that, that we really value that input, and we look to different agencies for expertise. So we have reached out to all of the reviewing agencies when we received the notice of intent and issued our public notice. And I am in the process of coordinating with all of them to get input and comments that we then pass on to the applicants so that they can incorporate it into their planning and design. And the goal is good siting. So, and like I said, we have 2 special advisory groups on this proposed facility, which is Wasco and Sherman Counties Board of Commissioners. Okay, next slide. I think I went to the next slide without telling you to go to the next slide.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
We're
So
done
you
with
want
this.
to pause there for a second so people can catch up. And it's basically everything I just said. So next slide. So I mentioned 16 general standards that are required for us to assess and determine as we review information. The state siting process is a standards-based review, so it's based on these 16 standards. And it's evidentiary. So we need to see information that demonstrates the burden of proof is on the applicant to provide that evidence to demonstrate that they meet that standard. It's our job as the siting division to evaluate that evidence. And that's part of what we're consulting with our reviewing agencies on, is the studies that have been conducted at the application phase. And then we make those recommendations in our draft proposed order to our council, the Energy Facilities Siting Council. And they're the ones who ultimately evaluate all of the information in the record to decide whether or not to grant a site certificate. Because we're at the notice of intent phase, we're really seeking any type of comment that anyone wants to provide. But it's important to note, because I said we are a standards-based process. If you want to comment, particularly on the draft proposed order, focusing your comments to relate to our standards is very important. So if you're making a comment or you have a concern, it is most effective. It's the best way for our council to evaluate it is to link it to one of our standards. So if you're worried about fish and wildlife habitat, link it to our fish and wildlife habitat standard. And that's how our council looks at the information that's provided. And so it's just a really important part of our process. Next slide. Okay, so at the notice of intent phase, the applicant is required to do a desktop assessment of what we call study areas. And the study areas are basically set by statute, and it's for them to go out and do like what we call a desktop, which is what is the available information out there in the universe that applies to this standard. And each of our standards has a slightly different, or there's different reasons why we have these study areas in the notice of intent. And so the notice of intent that the applicant submitted was required to do the desktop analysis for all of these. So as you can see, there's 20-mile study area for areas. Things like the cultural tend to be limited to the actual site boundary, and I'll get to the site boundary in a minute. Fish and wildlife has a 1/2 mile, and an endangered species is 5 miles. And one of the things that we're looking for input on at the NOI phase, whether it's a reviewing agency or the public, is what you think of, what should the analysis areas be? Oftentimes they're the same as this, but they can also change. So if you think that the analysis area doesn't need to be that big, or it should be bigger, this is a really important part of our process, particularly with our reviewing agencies, of getting that input on, does this make sense? Does it need to be bigger? Is there something we're not seeing here? And it's just at the NOI comment phase, this is one of the things that we're really trying to dial in, because in the project order that I prepare, I'm going to identify the required analysis areas for the application, and they may be the same, slightly modified, be different. So if you have thoughts or concerns about potential impacts of a project to these resources, then please be sure to put those in their comments and what you think those analysis areas should be. And then just land use is a complicated topic, but just so you know, the state siting process is what we call a consolidated review, and it pulls in most of the permits and requirements from local governments and state agencies that would otherwise apply through those different. It's to simplify the permitting process. So the requirements are still there, but it runs through one process of review, and that's why we call it consolidated review. For land use, the applicant has an option to have the land use review be conducted by the local government, or to have it in the consolidated state review. I believe in the notice of intent, the applicant has indicated that the local land use requirements for Wasco and Sherman counties, they're going to opt into utilizing the consolidated state review process. The applicant can choose to do the local review, but at the time they submit their application, they have to lock it in. They can't change their mind later if they say they wanted to do local review or state consolidated review in the application. Right now, they're not locked in, but once they put in the application, they can't change it. So just a really quick, next slide. Next slide.
I'm trying. Sorry.
The proposed facility location is that black outline. And just to give you an idea of where it is, what's in proximity, and like I said, it's approximately 12.6 square miles of private land. And from what I understand, the only portion of the facility that would actually extend into Sherman County is that transmission line, should it move in there, or is it, because it's right up against the border,
That's correct.
Okay.
The site facility is purely within Wasco.
Okay.
One of the proposed interconnection points is that line you see extending north, that goes into Sherman County.
And that's an option that they haven't.
One of two options.
Yes. So just next slide, very simply, and then this is just a really brief overview of what's in the notice of intent. So what is this facility? It's a proposed 800 megawatt solar photovoltaic energy generation facility with related or supporting facilities that include up to 800 megawatts of battery storage, a 34.5 collection system, a collector substation, an O&M building, and overhead 500 kV gen tie lines, fencing, access roads, staging areas. And as Jeff had noted, they're looking at two options for what we call a point of interconnection, or a POI. One would be directly adjacent to the facility. The other option is if they had to go north about 4.5 miles to connect with a different BPA substation. Next slide. So I just wanted, this is not the public comment period of this meeting, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the public comment period on this notice of intent. As I had mentioned, the public comment period opened the day we issued the notice on October 10th, and it will be open until December 1st. There are multiple ways to provide comment. We have a comment portal. You can email me. It's all in the public notice. There's a copy on the table back there if you haven't received one. And it's really, like I said, an opportunity. You can email me. You can send them snail mail. We take comments tonight. These will all become part of the comments that we include in the project order that I'm going to be preparing. As I noted before, It's not a public hearing. The public hearing comes after we issue a draft proposed order, and it's not required to comment if you wish to participate in a contested case at a later stage. And we'll open it up for Q&A and public comment after Jeff has an opportunity to provide his presentation. Next slide. This is also information that's on the public notice, but this is my contact information, my email, my phone number. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or any comments that you want to provide to the Department of Energy as we move through this process. And then the next slide, we have an amazing web-based resource. We have a great web page. This slide is really just to show you that there are several places in the Oregon Department of Energy Facility Siting Council website where you can get all sorts of information. We have a project web page set up for this facility. We will update that project page as things move along. There are ways to submit comments through the internet at our comment portal. Any comments that we receive get uploaded to what we call our siting docket so people can review and see what's been provided. We have a very public process. We have a public guide on how to participate in our process. We have handouts on that back table that also you can take with you that outline our process and how it works and what our standards are and where we're at in our process. And there's some good links down there at the bottom of that page. And so, like I said, I just really wanted to thank everybody here in the room in particular and anybody that's participating online for participating in our meeting. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to Jeff, who will talk about the facility.
You're on. You're okay.
Oh, good deal. Okay. Thank you. For anyone who just walked in or just joined online. Again, my name is Jeff Watson, development manager at Savion Energy and lead developer on this project. I'm going to keep things brief. Want to give everyone some time to make sure their questions and comments are heard and answered. So just going to quickly give an overview of Savion as a company and then the project. So Savion we are a US-based developer for renewable, whether that be solar, PV, storage or wind, based out of Kansas City, Missouri, operating in 33 states across the US. Savion is a portfolio company of and wholly owned by Shell Energy. Savion effectively functions as Shell's renewables arm in the United States. So while we are owned by Shell, we do operate as our own entity. And the benefit there is that we get to utilize any sort of connections or existing structure Shell may have in renewables, energy, et cetera, while still pursuing our own development efforts on their behalf. And next slide, please. So just to give an overview of our sort of experience in the industry. I know that's a lot of numbers up there, but over on the left, we have about 2.5 to upwards of 3 gigawatts of projects that are contracted. So have a contract to sell energy under construction or in operation. We are also have a significant solar and energy development portfolios, again, across 27 states. So one thing I will mention is that, Savion is a newer entry to the Pacific Northwest. That being said, I feel like at this point we have a very good foothold in, Oregon, Washington, even Idaho, and Shell as a company has significant investment in Washington. So we at Savion, we have a local team here across the Western Seaboard, and Shell has a pretty significant presence in Washington with a trading desk and other other teams based out of Spokane. And because of that investment in the Pacific Northwest, particularly within BPA, which this project is interconnecting into, there's been a lot of ways that, I guess all that is to say is that, we have a vested interest in succeeding in this part of the country and are very much here to stay. And next slide, please. So that's a bit about Savion. And so I just wanted to give you an overview of the project. I know that Kate already went through this, so I'll just try to walk through this quickly. So we are 800 megawatts of solar PV. That is going to be developed and constructed in phases, so divided into half. So think of it as two 400 megawatt projects divided up into phases. This may include up to 800 megawatts of battery energy storage. That number is yet to be fully determined, as BPA does provide us some flexibility there. But at most, it would be a 1-to-1 ratio of solar panels to battery storage. As I mentioned, that is on the BPA system. So BPA allows us to choose two POIs, or point of interconnections. Our first is along the Buckley to Grizzly 500 kV line number 2, which is directly adjacent to the project. We would effectively be what's called tapping the line, so constructing a new substation on site and having our point of interconnection be on site with the project. The other option we are exploring is running about a 4.5 mile gen-tie north into Buckley substation in Sherman County. This is something that is not yet. It is something we're looking at. It's something that we're doing our diligence on. It's not something we've fully yet secured. So we'll continue to look at this as an option. But for now, we do have an initial point of interconnection secured at the project site. And then quickly, just on permitting and site control. So site control being, the land that we have under control. We have the full amount of land, 8,075 acres, thereabouts. And our point of interconnection secured. And this past summer, we completed all of our field surveys and studies in preparation for the FSEC permitting process. So just a quickly touch on project milestones, our timeline, some basic stats. So at 800 megawatts, we are looking to power 182,000 homes with renewable energy. 8,075 acres, all in Wasco County. The expected life of this solar project is 40 years of operation. And at a project of this size, we expect a capital investment of $1 billion or more by the developer, so by ourselves. So we were able to get all of our land under control earlier this year. And field studies wrapped up at the end of fall. And as all of you know, the reason we're sitting here, our notice of intent was issued at the beginning of October. So that kicked off the FSEC permitting process. The ASC, or the application for site certificate, that's really, as Kate mentioned, that is the full site permitting application. And we're aiming to have that done by the end of January next year, hopefully sooner. But there is a lot of information to gather there. So that is about a 2-year process. So we're estimating our permit to have received our permit by the end of 2025. And we're looking at COD, commercial operations date, the date that the construction is completed, and we are putting energy on the grid at earliest by the end of 2028. And the one thing to mention throughout all of this, and this is going to be a theme in not only the presentation, but in how I answer questions or comments, is that we are looking to engage, to hear comments from, to make connections with any stakeholder, agencies, even local community members that are all impacted by this project. So that has already started, and it will continue all the way through and past our commercial operations date. So this is a facility, an overview of the facility. I won't spend too much time here. We actually have a map printed out over there. If you didn't get a chance to see it, feel free to go check it out after the presentation. Contact. So again, I would be the main point of contact. I have my business card over there by where Sarah's sitting, so feel free to take one, shoot me a message, give me a call whenever you'd like. Annika Soulsby is our permitting our lead permitting person on this project. And then, also this will be circulated. So should you need to talk to Mitch or Gary, who's head of engineering, procurement, and construction, their contact information is there as well.
Right. So now we're done talking. Reached that question and answer and comment period of our meeting. I just wanted to go over really quickly. If you are on the WebEx, this slide shows you how to participate or raise your hand to make a comment or ask a question. There is also a number on the notice. If you're on the phone, there's instructions on how to participate via phone. We're going to leave this slide up during the Q&A and the comment period, but we're going to start, as I had noted before, people in the room, people on the WebEx, and then people on the phone. And we will work on that. One of the things that I failed to mention at the beginning is that if you do want to comment, it's really important to us that we get your name accurately. There are comment cards on the back table. If you want to make a public comment tonight, we ask that you fill one out so that we have your contact information. If you are wanting to make an oral comment tonight, I think we're just going to open it up and see if there's anybody who wants to make a comment. And we do ask that you come up and sit at the table and speak into the microphone so we can get it recorded because the meeting is being recorded. And so we're going to start with the people in the room. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. You can also just write a comment on the comment card and hand it to Sarah or to Nancy or to me or to Chase before you leave tonight. And like I said, there's multiple ways to comment after this meeting as well. And you can also ask questions. You don't have to just have comments. You can just ask clarifying questions of what we just went over. So I'm going to stop and see if there's anybody in the room that would like to comment. We'll wait a couple of minutes until people get ready. You had a question.
It was answered.
Oh, okay, great.
I got a couple of questions. That's all right.
Can you state your name for the record? That would be.
My name's Ken Clark. With the recent Federal Emergency Regulatory Commission Order 2023 and the BPAQ reform, as a generator, when do you expect to be able to receive an interconnection agreement and a commercial, I think you said, but a commercial operation date?
That is a great question, one that we are, very closely monitoring and have been very much involved in the BPAQ reform process. I'll be honest, there is a bit of uncertainty as to how these reforms in the BPAQ reform will play out. We are targeting, like we said, end of 2028 for commercial operations date. I will say that is aggressive. I would probably say that it's anywhere from 2028 to 2030 based on how we're seeing those reforms play out. So in terms of when we expect interconnection, just kind of working backwards, I think that we would be looking at then in the 2026 range. And again, all of this is speculation. So those are general dates that we're looking at now, but again, are closely monitoring this process and how that affects the timelines on our project.
Have you entered the BPAQ?
Yeah, so we do have 2 positions for these projects. Without going too deep into the mechanics of the BPAQ, we are in the transitionary cluster. Basically, if we do not make that deadline, there would be significant impacts for the timeline, but we filed Q. We have 4 Q positions, of which were filed either early this year or late last year.
Yeah, as best as I was able to ascertain, the best estimate I could come up with is that the BPA will not start reviewing transmission clusters until 2025. Does that sound right?
Mitch, you know, I'll kind of, you've been most involved with the BPAQ reform. Would you say that's accurate for those in the transition cluster?
It's like in 2024 is at least earliest.
So that's a moving target.
I think unfortunately a lot of things in the BPA process are moving targets right now, but you're generally correct in what they might be getting to issuing additional.
Just one more question. So you said on Buckley 2, you've secured all entitlements or necessary easements?
No. So with Buckley, we have not. We're still exploring that possibility. For the line tap, we have, you know, the land there, we have everything we need to interconnect on site. With Buckley, there is still easements and other agreements or parties to work with to actually secure that. So something we're still working on at this time.
Great, thank you.
Answer your questions.
Is there anyone else in the room on that one like to comment? Ask a question?
Did you put the map up while people are asking?
Do you want me to spell it?
If it's complicated, yes.
DABULSKIS. That's Dabulskis. I'm Joe Dabulskis. I'm a Sherman County judge. And so my question pertains to your second option going to Buckley. Is that a choice you guys make to go over there, or is that would be a choice for them from BPA for an interconnect? And why would you choose to go there over right on site?
Good question. So, I mean, it's a choice that we make contingent upon working with various parties needed to secure easements to get there and gain access to the substation. So if we're able to secure that, then it is our choice. The reason why we would go there as opposed to interconnecting on site is it is significantly more expensive to build a new substation, which we would be required to do if we connected on site. Now, we are willing to do that. We don't think that that will, you know, overly negatively affect the economics of the project. That being said, if we can go to an existing substation, that allows us to have lower costs, therefore sell energy at a lower price.
So this may be a question you can or cannot answer. I mean, may not know. When is Buckley going to be upgraded?
Oh,
I'm just curious if your information same as my information.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Do you have like an estimate from BPA as to when it might be upgraded?
No, it's going to start. So within the next couple of years, it's going to start is what I'm told, but that's in a meeting like this. So it's not
That's
something handed to me, said we're going to start.
yeah, generally in line with what we've heard, but I think that that would be something we would get more information on as we keep getting more studies back from BPA, which have been somewhat delayed due to the queue process, the queue reform. So unfortunately, my information now is probably no better than yours.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to comment tonight or ask a question? Okay. And like I said, if you just want to write a comment or a question down, you can do it on one of the comment cards before you leave. And I'll pause for a minute, second. No one? Okay, I think we're going to move on and open up for the WebEx. Is there anybody on the WebEx?
They have their hand up.
You're on the WebEx. I'm just gonna read
Let me find that again, Kate.
the information on how to raise your hand. So if you're on the webinar, in the bottom of the right of your main window is a set of icons. If you click on participants, it will open a box that has a list of the participants on the window, and there will be a hand next to your login. And if you want to raise your hand to make a comment, you click on it. There's a little, if you're looking at the screen. And then if you want to click on it again to lower your hand when you're done. Is there anyone? Okay, we're gonna wait a few seconds and see if there's anybody that's on the webinar that wants to raise their hand. So we know you want to make a comment or ask a question. It takes a minute to figure it out. But nobody? Okay. And then if you're on the phone, is there anybody on the phone? There isn't? Okay. But if you were on the phone, you would press *3 to raise your hand. And I think I'm just gonna wait a minute to see if anybody has any final thoughts or comments, or any webinar participants raise their hand. Going. All right, well, that concludes our meeting. If there are no further comments, I really want to thank everybody that came. We really appreciate your participation and attendance in our meeting. And please feel free to grab some of our handouts on the way out for information.
And grab a cookie.
And thank you.